Hello and welcome to the program. I am DEJI, but I must see huge drama in Bayelsa State. As a matter of fact, even days after, that drama is yet to die down. The high hopes of Mr. David Leon, who was, of course, at some point the governor-elect of that state, of assuming office now as the fifth governor of the state, was dashed at the very last minute by a judgment of the Supreme Court. Now, a day before he was to be sworn in as the governor of the state, the Supreme Court disqualified David Leon and his running mate, Bio Barakuma Degi Emerio of the All Progressives Congress as winners of the November 16, 2019 governorship election. Of course, in that South state. A five-man panel of the Apex Court sacked the deputy governor-elect for submitting forged certificates to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. The court said Degi Eremio's disqualification had infected the joint ticket with which he and the governorship candidate Leon won the election. The Apex Court consequently ordered INEC to issue fresh certificates to the candidate of the party with the next highest votes, which is, of course, the PDP's candidate, that's Duoye Diri, and his deputy, Lawrence Ewuru Jakbo. Now, initially, both the APC and the PDP disagreed on the interpretation of the ruling. Speaking shortly after the ruling, though, Diri urged the APC to take it in good faith and look beyond party affiliation for the unity of Bayelsa State. On the other hand, the APC, through its national chairman, Adams Oshomole, initially said there will be no inauguration in the South State. But of course, that was later overtaken by event because, INEC later looked into it and decided that on the basis of the ruling of the Supreme Court, that the PDP candidate could actually be declared winner of the election. But let's just take a quick listen now to what Oshomole had said then.
It is clear that there is no candidate that meets the requirement of the Supreme Court, which means no one can be sworn in legally unless there is deliberate abuse of the legal process. We have accordingly asked our lawyers to look at all the windows that exist in law and take steps to ensure that the will of the people of Bayelsa State is not undermined on the altar of technicalities.
I am waving the olive branch to all my people in PDP who out of one thing or the other got angry and left us to APC. I'm waving the olive branch. Please come back. We have to build Bayelsa State together. They are Bayelsans. We cannot continue to be in disunity. Being in APC does not remove you as my brother of Bayelsa State. Whether you are Nimbe, whether you are Ogbea, whether you are Sabama, whether you are Southern Niger, that is the region that God has brought us together. And so I am extending my olive branch even to those of my brothers and sisters in AP.
Now, of course, INEC went ahead, as I said, to declare Duoye Diri the governor of Bayelsa State. And, of course, he's since been sworn in as the governor of that state. And he's now the governor of the state, as a matter of fact. And so quite a sad one for David Leon and the All Progressives Congress. They missed it at the very last minute. But joining me now to discuss this dramatic situation further is Mondo Ubani, a former vice president of the Nigerian Bar Association. He joins us from Abuja. Mr. Ubani, thank you very much for joining us on the program. How would you describe this drama?
It is a drama indeed because this is the first time the deputy governor-elect scene is used to stop a governor-elect from being sworn in. We only have known of scenes of the governor-elect or the governor who has been elected properly, but not the scene of deputy governor. So this is a pre-election matter that had been on, I'm sure, before the election itself that took place sometime last year. And remember that after he won, his opponents went to court and up to the Supreme Court. The court pronounced David Leon as a properly elected governor of Bayelsa State. And that decision was taken either 2 or 3 days before this pre-election matter was finally determined by the Supreme Court.
Now,
it's clearly unfortunate.
Okay. I was just going to ask you to help us to make sense of why, something that affects the deputy governorship candidate would affect the governorship candidate himself.
Yeah, the provision of the Constitution is very clear as to the validity of the governorship position of any state. For you to be declared a governor or for you to be known as a validly elected or nominated governorship candidate of any political party in Nigeria today, you must have a deputy. And if you don't have any deputy, then you cannot in any way be qualified to be declared a governor of a state. And not only must you have a deputy governor, but whose qualification must also be in the same vein with that of the governor. In other words, if the governor is said must possess school cert paper or result, that also will be the qualification for that of the deputy governor. Also, issue of age is also the same qualification. So if you are not qualified as a governor, of course, you cannot be declared a governor. If your deputy governor is also not qualified in accordance with the Constitution, he can also not be said to be a deputy governor. So what happened, in effect, is that it is the provision of the Constitution that was actually used, that if it is found out from the findings of the court that the deputy governor was not qualified to be a deputy governor of a governor who has been elected, then that means that the governor himself.
But how do you explain this? This individual in question had been a commissioner of that state, had been a commissioner of that state, had also been a senator, and no issue at all at any time arose over his qualification or his results or certificate, so to speak.
Maybe over these years, the issue of his qualification has never been brought before the court. Maybe nobody has challenged, his position. Now that he's being elevated, maybe some of the people that know a bit of him, maybe INEC is required by law to publish the credentials of any of the candidates within 7 days after receipt of the qualification document of a candidate. Maybe after the publication, somebody must have gone and studied his qualification and found out that there are some level of discrepancies. Who knows? But then, it is a very good question you have asked. And that's why some of us, we question this decision for some time. And how are we entitled to do that is, look, there is no university, there is no particular examination body that was actually brought before the box.
Yes, I was actually going to ask you that, because in a case of forgery, we know you lawyers would always say it has to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. Now, do you think in this case that it was proven beyond reasonable doubt that his certificates were forged? Because we still do not know, and as a matter of fact, it's on record that witnesses were actually not called from even the examination body and all of that.
Yeah, that is what I was trying to explain. I'm sure that the court did not use the word forgery. What they use is issue of false. Of course, that is covered under the provision of the Electoral Act 2010, as amended. If you look at Section 31, I think subsection 6, if anyone feels at any time that the information given by a candidate to INEC is false, he has the right to approach the High Court or the Federal High Court of the state.
Now, when it's false, doesn't that tantamount to forgery? In this case?
No, it does. It's for when there is the difference between forgery and false.
No, I'm saying in this case now. I mean, you look at, of course, the wordings the Supreme Court used, that obviously those certificates do not belong to him. So it means can't we safely say that if the certificates actually don't belong to him, then he forged them?
Well, as I said earlier, the Supreme Court did not use the word forged, so I'm not bound to use that word forgery. But I think that maybe they were looking at the issue of being false, and that the names were different. All the name certificates he submitted, none were very consistent. Even though he had an affidavit that tried to explain that these are his names, and there was also a newspaper publication reflecting all that. But my own take, as I said earlier, is that we must know that how the matter was commenced was by originating summons. And when you commence a matter with originating summons, that means that it's an issue of interpretation of a document. And you don't call witnesses to come and give oral evidence, which is different from when you commence with a writ of summons. So I Also, lawyers over time, we debate over this issue, whether there was actually a conclusive proof that this man is not the owner of the certificates that he tendered in court. Now, as you rightly pointed out, which of the universities abroad was actually called to come and give evidence saying that this man never in any way attended their university, or even WAEC, or even the one of the primary school saying that it wasn't the certificate proper. That conclusion was reached without any oral evidence from any of these institutions coming to corroborate the fact that it wasn't his certificate that he tendered in court. But the assumption was because of the different names that appeared in those certificates that it may not be his. That was the conclusion.
But isn't it dangerous to make assumptions like that?
Yeah, so over time, that's what I'm saying, over time, legal pundits, analysts, we look at the decision of the Supreme Court on this. Was Supreme Court right to have finally arrived at the conclusion that these names were not his, were not his, and the certificates were not his, based off on the fact that they were all different in names, even though he had an affidavit that tried to explain that those were his own. And there was no contradiction by any person saying that these certificates were not his own, or he didn't obtain this certificate from the universities or the schools he actually claimed that he attended. So these are issues. But whatever it is, if a man that is a deputy is found not to be qualified educationally to be a governor or a deputy governor, it will affect the governorship position, and that is actually what has happened. And say the Supreme Court came to the conclusion that in as much as this man certificate or qualification had an issue, he has to go down not only by himself but also with the governor, which again raises the issue. Why would you use a pre-election matter to actually remove a governor whose mandate has been validated by the people? Because if we believe that sovereignty belongs to the people, if we believe that people should determine who becomes their governor, who should rule them over time, in accordance with democracy and the tenets of democracy, why would a five-man panel be the one now to determine who becomes a governor of a state? Because this, to me, is technical justice, because the people has actually validated this man's electoral process, electoral victory, in the polling unit, which took place all in December, in February or March last year. But now, through technicality and the insufficiency or non-qualification of the deputy governor, that particular mandate that has been given by the people has been nullified today, and yesterday, and somebody who never got the majority vote of the people is now going to be the governor of a state. So there are issues, over time, pundits and analysts will look at this particular case and look at the justice of it, and maybe we take a look again at our Electoral Act and even the provisions of our Constitution.
Let's just quickly take a short break now. And when we come back, it's actually, I want us to talk about the Electoral Act, that going forward, what do you expect to see? Because the expectation now is that probably there should be some kind of amendment now to some of these sections that are generating a lot of controversy that the Supreme Court obviously relied on now to give that verdict. We'll take a short break, sir, but just stay with us. We'll be right back. On DEJI 360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent.
Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment, so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country?
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that ballot.
DEJI 360, providing clarity to issues.